Hi, this is part 2 of my the other video I've done, Dare to Have Faith, and I just found this, which is from 2014, the Young Turks, and we've got Jimmy Dore being interviewed and given a prime spot, and they describe how honoured they are. I mean, I have noticed that Jimmy Dore's pretty absent from TYT News in recent years, and I mean, I like TYT News for the level of news that they provide. I understand that they fill a certain niche, and that's okay. They're giving some news. There's a lot of news. I do notice the news that they don't cover. So this week, while there's been a lot of focus on Kavanaugh and a lot of righteous indignation expressed about that on all sides, and then, you know, you've got, at the same time, there's children starving in the Yemen. There's the fact that Iran has just won a case that it brought to the UN court against America, against these sanctions that America is imposing on it as unlawful, that America has really unlawfully broken its agreement with Iran, that America itself had helped establish that, and have really, for no valid reason, decided to impose sanctions against Iran because of Iran's involvement in standing by Assad against ISIS, and which all intelligence tells us, true intelligence tells us, that everything that's happening in Syria is as a direct result of CIA-led social unrest. And that's how they do it. They do it with money, they do it with funding, they do it with picking out certain radical individuals, giving them a bit of power, giving them a bit of money. The money attracts interest, and this guy's looking for a particular type of interest from a particular type of people, consciousness, for whatever reason, tends towards the extreme. Perhaps secretly they're a sadist, but they need justification for their sadism, because if they go around committing their acts of sadism willy-nilly, they'll just end up in prison as a criminal. But if they can align themselves with a so-called political or faith choice, which actually isn't a choice because it is just an incitement to crime, using faith as a justification, or using politics as a justification, a political ideology or a faith ideology, or both, as justification for endorsing acts of sadism, you see. Rapists, for example, or paedophiles might be attracted into a faith-led extremist organisation that is going to give him the right to help himself to as many 8-year-old girls as he can, or that'll give him free access to women to rape, or a sadist who you'll get to chop the heads off young Iraqi teenagers for watching football. And we see the same kind of promise that's been offered to the followers of the so-called far right in places like America, Europe. I mean, I'm not saying that all these people that support Trump are secretly sadists. I think the vast majority of them are good people who are just genuinely confused. And because they're so confused, they've been persuaded by the force of the rhetoric to accept this rationale, alleged rationale, because there's nothing rational about it. As I've explained in my previous video, there is nothing of reality to support the rationale that immigrants are responsible, or will be even, the downfall of America. So, you know, I noticed that when you look back through history, there wasn't the same complaints from masses of people complaining that slavery was robbing them of jobs. But that's basically what these people are saying now, because the immigrants, the illegal immigrants that do enter America, really are, to all intents and purposes, working as slaves. So America is complaining that slavery is robbing them of jobs. The slaves are the ones that are committing all the crimes. When, in fact, everybody is a slave. Everybody is a slave. But, you know, like I say, there are always, within any population, you're going to have people who veer towards the extreme. Because they've got a psychological problem. Who knows why people end up that extreme? The extremists will also attract psychopaths of a criminal type, because, as I've said, the condition of psychopathy does not necessarily mean that that person is unethical, immoral, or a criminal. It's perfectly possible to be a psychopath and yet at the same time still uphold the law and live conscientiously, because it's about consciousness, isn't it? And psychopaths do have a consciousness. Alright, maybe they're not connected to a conscience as connected to a heart and a balanced intellect that has the benefit of understanding also from the heart, so it can look at things in a balanced way. In a way, the psychopath is intellectually blind. Intellectually partial, well, I wouldn't say totally blind, but, you know, the equivalent of partially sighted. And so anybody who is diagnosed with that condition, oh, you are a psychopath, you lack empathy, you lack compassion, then that person then would be intelligent, you know, well, hopefully would be intelligent enough to understand, then I do need to listen to these people who aren't partially sighted, who actually have the benefit of full sight, and let them guide me, because I will just have to trust them. I will just have to put my faith in them, that they know what they're talking about, because I actually can't see that, you see. So if I've got no legs and I need help from time to time to get into my wheelchair or to get into a bath, I just have to trust that the people who are helping me to do that, they are strong enough to do those things for me, and, you know, that I can trust them. I can trust them not to drop me. And today we're living in a society where people are actually conditioned into the mindset of a psychopath to accept that's the strong ruling force. That's the mindset that rules us. We might have questions against it, we might feel it hurts us in some way, but fundamentally and covertly, because, you know, this isn't spelled out to us, covertly we're told that's why we aren't up there in Parliament or having a proper voice or saying things, because we just haven't reached those highest echelons of intellect, you see, where we can ignore compassion, we can ignore how our economic policy is inflicting dire poverty onto children. We can ignore equally the fact that with dire poverty, when parents are being forced to raise children in dire poverty, parents tend to be very stressed, they tend to be more emotional, they tend to be depressed. the time, therefore the children are not they aren't connecting to a balanced, healthy parent as they should be, feeling self-respect and dignified and able to provide for their children. Instead, they're dealing with a parent who feels oppressed, depressed, is actually blaming themselves most of the time, or trying to avoid all of those feelings by turning to drugs and alcohol, whether it be medical drugs or illegal drugs. That element of it, you can't even talk about that. That doesn't come into it. What we talk about is pounds and pence and whether somebody can afford to pay the gas or electric. Nobody talks about the levels of depression and despair people start sinking into when they're sat in a house with no electric and have to go and queue up at a food bank to get some food, or go and beg the neighbour for some bread. Nobody talks about these things. People commonly accept that a government can impose austerity on a society on behalf of criminal bankers that have robbed the nation. Okay, so we won't even talk about that, except to say they're all too big to prosecute. But the people on the ground aren't too big to prosecute. The people on the ground who are driven to crime, despair, committing crimes against each other, they can be prosecuted. They're evil people. They've committed crimes. When actually the fact is that the people on the bottom are simply reflecting the crime and criminals that are governing them. And that ruling force of power does impose crimes then on the greater society. So even the people who feel they're at an economic advantage and are somehow superior to the people who are economically disadvantaged, those people will not live in a happy society. They will have to spend more money on insurance, more money on home security. The costs of living start to rise so much that ultimately, you know, professional people working in Britain today, a lot of them are actually living to the same standards of living that people lived in the 1990s, 1980s, 90s on the benefit system. That's it. And benefits, this is the other thing, the attack on welfare. The whole reason why social security, welfare was established was on strength of the true rationale that the people born onto planet Earth, the life of planet Earth, have a right to sustenance that planet Earth provides. They have a right to shelter, they have a right to food, they have a right to live within a community, they have a right to dignity and respect, they have a right to law. Okay, they have rights. We have rights as living creatures on planet Earth. Even a mouse has a right to make itself a little home and go and gather its food and fill its stores for winter. These are our living rights. These are our universal rights. This is what the universe has granted to all the life on planet Earth, that we thrive on our planet and we enjoy the resources of our planet, and at the same time we contribute in our living to the welfare of our planet, as all life does. That's the idea. That's reality. Now we've got this other set of people that then come along and say, oh no, actually we own these waters, these lands, you can pay us rent. And oh, actually no, you're not allowed to make your own shoes and clothes anymore. No, we're ending all that. We've set up these factories, you come and work for us we'll pay you a wage. You can go and buy your clothes from our shops with money that we print from our banks, and you'll vote for one of the people that we pay for to stand as your political representative. Okay, well, everything seems to work. People have got jobs, they're able to buy, they've got homes, on the surface. But then, you know, these people turn around and say, actually, we only want you in for one day this week because business has gone a bit slow, and no, actually, we're not going to pay you a proper wage. You are going to work for us and live on or below the poverty line. In fact, you're going to work for us, you'll be worse off, a lot worse off than you were if we didn't exist and you were living on your little farm, weaving your own cloth and visiting the local healer for some medicine. And in fact, you're going to even be more unhappy because you're not going to be living in a tight-knit community where everybody gets together and helps each other out, and you've got a sense of kin, and you've got a sense of friendship and social support with your own social celebrations. No, no, no. You'll be bereft of all that. You will be living in one room with your entire family. You're going to watch your children die because you can't afford a doctor, because there are no local health healers. We own everything. We own the doctors, we own the education system, we own your church even. We will tell you which God to worship. And we will establish a media that will operate on strength of total ignorance of all of that, and just put forward our narrative and our covertly controlled opposing narrative to make you think that you've got a choice, when actually you've been absolutely 100% robbed of choice. And that's the situation with a lot of the people now supporting this far-right extremism. The controllers of it all, they know full well what they're doing. They're operating on a plan. Part of that plan is the Greater Israel Project, but there's other parties involved in that same consciousness, that same cabal. They've all got their specific goals. There's always 5 ways, there's 5 points that this consciousness benefits of everything that they do. And like, you know, the 5 points with this Kavanaugh thing, it seems like a great embarrassment and shame, that, oh yeah, people have picked up on this Kavanaugh stuff and what he did when he was a teenager, and obviously is still the same despicable character today because he couldn't even apologise for what he did as a teenager. Because he is the product of a society that does not believe in forgiveness, that lives by antiquated Babylonian judgments against women to this very day, inherent misogyny. And as I've explained in a previous video, that misogyny is specifically to oppress the woman, to stop her from raising a true father, you see. Because these oligarchs have been posing as a patriarchy, when they're not a patriarchy at all. And they're Babylon female. She is not in any way a matriarchy. She is their total slave. And she is what they need to raise more male oligarchs. And she will always bow down to them. She will always be happy to live in this male-dominated consciousness that calls itself a patriarchy, that is actually an oligarchy. And, you know, I've made a video recently because now there's an attack against Jimmy Dore. Apparently he is toxic. But what's toxic is the ignorance. And what's toxic is the levels to which people have been persuaded to swallow the rhetoric, the insane rhetoric. It is actually insane. And it is where we're going to put our faith. And so I mentioned about, toward the end of my last video, you know, about people need to take this leap of faith that the psychopaths daren't take. Because at the moment, the facts of our eternal quantum energy, golden, universal golden light being body and intelligence, the fact of that has not yet been widely accepted on Earth. It's still in the twilight zone where I am, where I've lived all of my life. Okay? Because of my experiences, both good and bad. I'm in the twilight zone. I was in the twilight zone as a victim survivor of 17 years child abuse. And I've been in the twilight zone now as a survivor of witnessing a golden light being and receiving the message of universal law. I'm a survivor of the judgments, because that is what I was suffering. That's why I was suffering. That's what I understand. My parents were victims of the judgments, the Babylonian judgments, against them, against other people, against their children, all of which was subliminally accepted and left them feeling depressed, worthless, and deprivation does become depravity. You know, so my dad was a child abuser as well as a wife batterer. My so-called dad. He was actually a ghost of the human he should have been. That's the fact of it. These are the facts. No matter how much they dress it up and make everything look rosy with their Hollywood treatment, the bright lights and all the pomp, and you know, you look at Trump stood there with his security and in his golden room, and it's all for show. It's a show. It's not real. What's real is the suffering of our planet and the suffering of the people, and most dreadfully the suffering of the children. And we have been raising damaged generations, generation after generation after generation, damaged by this brutal oligarch that's been calling himself a patriarch, and his equally cold-hearted Babylonian mistress. And it is as a result, direct result of those centuries and centuries of judgments and how society has absorbed them, a legacy. We're talking about a psychological, intellectual, emotional legacy of thoughts that are there waiting to feed off the children as soon as they're born. Nobody's born a racist. Okay? Nobody's born a misogynist. These are created. These thoughts are waiting. These thoughts and of dead men, of dead people that built the institutions, that ordered their slaves, because that's what they were, the slave workforces, that ordered their slaves to build the buildings that stand to this very day, to represent the institutions of power controlled by those consciousnesses. The bodies die, but the thoughts are there, waiting to vamp off the next generation with their judgments and the confusions. And we need to step out of those. And, you know, that's why I'm explaining, specifically to people of the far right, now, so-called, understand that you're not with the far right, you're with the far wrong. You're with the far wrong. Being wrong ceases to be a crime the moment the person who's been following that suddenly realises the reality of what they're doing and ceases to be a part of it and gets with what is truly right. A lot of that consciousness presently condemned mostly as left. Sinister is the connotation behind that left label. You know, dexter, right, sinister, left. And that is why there's that sinister element around the left, the socialist. And this idea that we can differentiate, we can split socialism and capitalism into two opposing political parties. And ultimately, both of them end up serving one body, the corporate body. The body that gives socialism to itself and, you know, hard fascist capitalism to everybody else, in the sense that, no, you aren't allowed to have your own business, you will work for our business. And the more you're prepared to say yes to us, and the more capable you are of doing the things we want doing, then the more we'll pay you. And then you will make sure that the masses will work for a slave wage, and that there's absolutely nothing they can do to stop us. We will control the police. We will control the military. We will control the people who write the laws. We will control the courts. We will control everything, and they will get away with it. For the simple fact that people do actually believe in their world and their money and their consciousness, and they believe that there's no real alternative, and that actually we are powerless. That is what people are conditioned to believe, and therefore some, you know, people will go and support somebody like Trump, because at the end of the day, well, at least he's on the side of the power. We're never going to defeat them. We might as well just love him. If you can't beat them, join them, kind of attitude. Yeah, let's hate the immigrants. Let's not burden ourselves with all the crimes that have been committed in our name as American citizens. Let's absolve ourselves of all that responsibility and just buy the rhetoric, buy the lie. It's comforting. It helps us to hear Trump explain to us how Muslims are evil, and how it's okay to hate Mexican immigrants, how it's okay to hate gays, how it's okay to demand that women are denied the rights of autonomy over their own bodies. We're thinking about the unborn baby, say the people who have no cares in the world about the fact that their government has forced abortions and miscarriages and stillbirths on the women of the Middle East with their depleted uranium weapons. No, those people aren't bothered about that. So we're not talking about a compassionate sense here for our humanity. Because no, you're talking about a discriminatory sense for humanity. They discriminate when it comes to being concerned about unborn children. They discriminate between the children who are being turfed out of the womb or born dead because of their government's weapons in the illegal wars, that atrocities they've committed in Iraq. No, they will discriminate, you see. No, discriminately, they can ignore that. What they're concerned about is the fact that American women are not birthing babies, and white women especially are having the least babies. The white race is under threat here. I mean, it's so ridiculous. But it's been believed. It's been bought. It is being sold. It's a convenient pack of lies. It's a convenient justification for crimes and wrongdoing that these people, they don't want on their conscience. So the way to do it is, well, I don't believe any of that. I believe Mr. Trump. I'm putting my faith in him. He is my leader. Actually, he's God. Jesus sent him. Jesus. And as I said in a previous video, can anybody imagine Jesus with his disciples engaging in the kind of locker room talk that Trump engages in? Jesus, who viewed women as his sister, would he tolerate to stand listening to a guy bragging about how he sexually assaults Jesus' sisters? I tell you, if Jesus whipped the money lenders out of the temple, I couldn't have seen. If Jesus was on that bus when Donald Trump was making his self-confession, I think Donald Trump would have left that bus with a black eye, at the least. And I'm not promoting physical violence, but there is a point where humans will respond as Jesus responded in the face of such tyranny, that they will be enraged. And really the things that Trump has said and what he stands for and what he said about women, his remarks about women, and the suspicions related already, 19 women describing him as a sex offender. There comes a point where, you are not going to tolerate that in your presence. And that's what I mean about the conditioning, the social conditioning, the judgments, the lies, and why suddenly they're popular now. You're talking about a people in denial, a people who cling to Fox News now, the last bastion of the justifications. And the people, the same, who are the bulk, the majority, are in a state of shock, despair, despondency, just at the point when we are encouraged to believe that we are our weakest now. They've installed their latest perjurer, lawfully suspected criminal, as Supreme Court judge. No, now is the time that we are most strong. Now is the time that we have potential to be most strong. Because what is the point of me sharing all of my thoughts and understandings? Because I do the research. I work for humanity. I was given a job to do by the universe. Because I did witness universal golden light being, an event of it. I did receive the message of universal law of abundance and compassion, which is the creation of the pure intelligence our biological living bodies were created to be host to. The truth and reality of that is amazing. It is fantastic. It is beautiful. It is a higher state of being. And we will abandon the ridiculous criminal ways of this world the minute that we align with it. And it's only our lack of faith, our lack of belief that is doing that. And I am explaining that today, that lack of faith and that lack of belief is conditioned into us by a consciousness that has thrived now, in Britain anyway, for over 1,000 years. on the very strength of the fact that they crushed and oppressed Jesus. What the Christian movement really represented was about human rights against the mighty oppression of Rome, a criminal force of power that lives by the order of a wolf pack. So that's what it was about. That is why the first Christians, they weren't Christian by a faith. There was Judaic Christians. Okay? There were voodoo, African voodoo Christians. European, Celtic, Druid Christians. Jesus was accepted into their pre-existing faiths. Jesus did not come to create a religion. Jesus came to put the human being back at the centre of religion, of faith, and to abolish the traditions that have evolved around the religion, traditions that have been imposed, that are the result of the kind of people that wish to exploit people's natural human allegiance to the supernatural that created us. And they've had heavy control for over 1,000 years. You know, there was a point in Britain where women had rights. They had rights to autonomy. They had rights to become warriors. They had rights to own lands, to be leaders, to their own wealth, to choose their husbands, divorce if they wanted to. All of these things, women had rights. They were respected members of their society. Every Celtic Christian church had an abbess. All of that was bang, gone, swept away. Ultimately and finally with the arrival of William the Conqueror, who was funded by the Pope. That was it. That took control of Britain. Women, sorry, no rights for you. Your children, all born in the original sin. No, they're not innocent and holy as Druid Christians believed, accepted that children were innocent and holy. Every child. No, not under Roman Christianity. Every child born in original sin. Need the devil beating out of them. They're born with the devil in them. That was the attitude. And women, don't trust them. Satan's friend. He tempted Adam. She's responsible for the downfall of man. Never give her any power, ever listen to her again. Dangerous. Gone was the matriarch society. In comes the wolf pack with its alpha male and the Babylonian bitch. The Babylon, his Babylon bitch. This, what we're living now, this is what people need to understand. Lose the distractions. When you understand it for what it actually is, that's when you can get real. It's scary. Yes, it's scary. But let's face it, trying to survive in this world right now, if you're not a millionaire, is scary, isn't it? It's scary thinking about, oh my gosh, I could lose my job. Oh, I won't even think about it. What would happen if I lose my job? I lose my home. I'll probably end up getting divorced. I probably might have a breakdown. I might even lose my children. Oh, I won't think about it. I'll just keep going. Turn on the TV. Let's watch some entertainment. Let's watch a comedy film. Let's go out and get drunk. Let's have a party. Anything. Let's talk about anything other than facing reality. At any moment, my life could be over just with some guy telling me, sorry, you're out of work. And me knowing that I've got to go and compete with how many for these jobs that don't even pay me a living wage, and I will have to then rely on the government to pay subsidise, so that employers, you know, and it was nice to see Bernie Sanders has picked up on it at last, because, you know, people like myself have been saying exactly the same about working tax credit since it first came out, that it's basically a benefit for employers so they can pay people crap wages knowing that the government's going to subsidise. It was disgusting. How people accepted it, I don't know, but they did. They went out there, oh, give me working tax credit. Yeah, I'll work full time and also claim these handouts off the government because my employer just flatly refuses to pay me enough to actually live on. It's stupid and it's insane. People bought it. And those same people have been telling me that I'm insane because I witnessed a light being. And so, you know, to end this now, I would just like to ask people to just suppose for one moment that I'm not insane, that I really did witness the event of light being as described in the Supernatural or Not Yet video, which I will leave under this. Just suppose for one moment that that really happened. It really happened to somebody like myself, who has survived also 17 years child abuse and all the mind horror that comes with that. And just to think about how difficult it was for me to come out about that, to talk to people about my experience, to be delighted with it, to have people just crush me, tell me that I'm lying, tell me that I'm mad, that would actually use the fact I was abused as a child to justify their opinion, their judgment that I'm mad. That people would go out of their way to be nasty to me, to spread malicious gossip about me. That people would be suspicious and afraid of me and treat me like an alien and take advantage of me and even attack me and even steal off me and even try to turn my own son against me. That I had to deal with all of that, and at the same time I'm going through flashbacks of the absolute horror of my childhood, which it was. We lived with a madman. We had to flee from him to a squat, a battered wife squat. We literally had to run for our lives. In the 1970s, women had no rights. Women were still getting half pay. And I'm having, my brain is suddenly flooded by the memories of that, because the consciousness is fighting back in my head. It is there in my head, fighting back against the light being and trying to take control of my brain, of my being. And I had to fight that battle on my own. I think at most 3 friends, but I did have 2 good friends, both males, that stood by me. They did not understand what I was going through, but they had faith in me, in my intellect, and who I am, my integrity, and they stood by me, they helped me. And women, absolutely. I had such a bad time. I felt so let down by women, you know. I mean, my own mother had stood against me. From childhood, really. People just ignoring what happened, you know. When you've got the state, after hearing the horror that you've had to suffer at the hands of your father's social services, social workers, and all they can do is turn around and tell you that you need to try and rebuild a relationship with that man. And I look back now and I still think, all right, people say, oh yeah, well, in them days that was the way they handled it then. As if our intelligence, our compassion is something that changes every decade, you know, like, oh well, you know, in those times, social workers, they just didn't understand. I'm sorry, it isn't about being a social worker, it's about being a human being. What human being of any age for the last, 3,000 years even, could hear a child's story about what they've suffered at the hands of somebody and then turn around and say to that child, we think that you should rebuild a relationship with them, when there were obviously no relationship there except abuse. But you know, I had to get my brain around that. I had to live through that, to carry the weight of the anger and upset and just the total despair that it left me feeling, that this was the authorities standing by daddy, basically, and telling me, no, forgive him. That isn't forgiveness. Ignorance is not forgiveness, because, but all right, I forgive you, daddy. Is it going to make him change? Is he changing? Is he not still a risk to children? That's why forgiveness comes with admittance, confession, repentance, remorse. Because we understand we were wrong, and people will feel remorse. We will feel regret. But have faith, have strength, find courage in what's right now. Have hope in the goodness that you can do. That's the whole point of forgiveness, to liberate people so that they can do something positive, as opposed to blindly supporting the negative that they're conditioned to think is positive. Because it looks easy. It's easy to hate. And we are in a world where people are conditioned to believe that people who live with compassion are weak. No, no, no. It's a strength to live with compassion. It's a strength to feel so hurt, to be so abused, and to have your heart feeling like you just want to rip that person's head off for what they've done. But your consciousness, your intellect, your brain says, look, what is that going to achieve? It may satisfy your anger right now, but what is that going to achieve, other than now you have become the enemy? You have become the monster. Understand, this person is a victim themselves. That's why they're creating more victims. Address what is controlling and creating these monsters, because it's no good just attacking the monsters of every generation, locking them up. Okay, how do we stop creating them? What is it within our society, within our culture, that is culturing this consciousness? Why is it every generation is apparently producing more and more paedophiles? More and more misogynists? What is it about the consciousness that produces the kind of men who, at their most extreme, become serial killers, prey on women, specifically on women? For some reason, they hate women. That's something wrong with the society. That's a reflection of the society that creates that kind of man. That maybe he was badly damaged and abused by a badly damaged, abused mother. These are the real sources of the problems in our society. Like I say, not immigrants. These are the source of problem that every human being is suffering on our planet right now, because our planet is largely oppressive against the female. That's the fact of it. The vast majority of women on earth have no choice, very little wealth, no autonomy, no say, no power. And those are the 5 points that this oligarchy is benefiting from. And it's time to end it. So, like I say, my explanation here about the light being, yes, the universal truth is arrived at this point in time for a reason. The light is shining. Take that leap of faith. Okay? Take the leap of faith. Stand with the light being. Understand that I am not explaining this because I wish to become some powerful, rich person with an army of people following me. Okay? That is not the idea. There's lots of people out there to be following in terms of what their ideas are and what they're actually doing. Like, for example, Mr. Renard Bernard with his Bank of Joy. It's just one example. There's lots of people. There's Bernie Sanders. He's got some brilliant ideas. There's lots of people with really good, positive solutions that just need investment, that just need support on the ground. People need legal representation. Are there any lawyers out there? Barristers? Come on, we need you now to start tackling this issue of crime and the way the law is being twisted right now, to actually prosecute the victims on behalf of protecting the criminals. That is what is happening, and it is up to you barristers now. Are you a genuine human being? You might be a barrister in this world, but before this universal intelligence, you are a biological host. So what is your biological host to? Are you going to get with the law? Are you going to start standing up for people's human rights? Because we want this done lawfully. We want it done sanely, because our planet cannot cope with any more distress. The children will be put at even greater risk in the midst of massive social unrest. So it's up to the people of the police, the people, you know, of the Freemasons, the people of the military, the people of governments. It's up to you people. You are going to need to get on the side of our humanity and our universal being as human beings first, and government ministers and police officers last. And then humanity will be empowered, won't we? Because humanity will have a police force to arrest the criminals. It will have a military to protect us from the corporate aggressor. We will have a true intelligence to weed out the Cambridge Analyticas and their trolls, their puppet, sock puppet accounts that the internet's full of. Then we will have the power to remove the legal definition of minor that presently stands in judgment against our children. And as I've said before, that is why they're able to, that's why this government of Britain was able to impose austerity without having a care in the world about what impact it was going to have on British children, because children are a minor concern. So like I say, just imagine, suppose for a moment that I really did witness the light being and understand the level of upset that I have to live with, you know, to be that close to the universal consciousness, to have witnessed, to have communed with it, to know the levels of rage and despair and upset that universal intelligence feels to witness what is happening on our planet today. That it's just so sad, and I live with it, I know it, I feel it, I know it. And it's something that everybody on this planet alive today will know. The very worst of it. And I'm warning you. You don't even want to go there. Because there's not many people would be strong enough to live with it. And the reason why some of us are is because we've been prepared. You know, life has prepared us for that. We've survived. We've already survived. And that's why we're strong enough to cope with the emotion and not go around killing people. So who is strong here? Who is really strong? Not the Trumps of this world, but the survivors. And if you want to survive, you need to stand with the survivors. And I'm a survivor. And Jesus is with me. The universal light being is with me. Get with the universal light being. The universal light being is available to everybody. There is no discrimination. Even the people who've been bad, who've been criminals in this world, who realise, who have the awakening. Oh my gosh, what have we been doing? The corporations, you can turn this around. Like Amazon now has decided, alright, yeah, actually, it's true. We are just being evil. We're giving ourselves massive bonuses. And our workers are really struggling. Let's give them a living wage. Let's double their wages. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Is anybody there going to persecute you because before you weren't giving them a proper wage? You know, because before you were part of one consciousness, suddenly you've woken up, you've realised, look, yes, this is wrong. And that's good. And that's why forgiveness is there. Forgiveness isn't for the dead. What's the point of forgiving people when they're dead? What can a dead person do to change? It's too late then. So we do need to change. We do need to save our planet. Our planet is at risk, seriously at risk. We need massive, major radical change. We need to stop these plastic factories. We need to invest in hemp. Let's have biodegradable plastics. We've got to clean our planet up. We need to take steps now, because if people only knew what these liars won't tell you, that they keep you distracted in your hate. Just focus on your hate. Who can you hate? You won't notice that your planet's dying until you see your children dying. Look what the people in Yemen are having to face, having to witness their children starving to death. Can you even imagine it, America? You better start imagining it, because that's the path you're on. It is inevitable. And like I say, the way forward. Now, you never go, we can't fight them with bombs and bullets. We can't fight them with riots. They lose when we understand everyone's a winner in this universal law and love. That's when they lose. When we realise that we are winners. Okay? Everyone's a winner. And the winning side is the side of life, isn't it? It is the side of love. It is the side of the natural universal intelligence that wrote our DNA. And wrote compassion into that, and gave us a perfect, balanced law of abundance in compassion that upholds our human rights and animal rights and earth rights. And we need to get with it. We need to get with it. That will deliver us our socio-capitalist society. Balance, harmony. And it is a time for rejoicing. But I tell you, yes, we will feel grief for the crimes that were committed in the ignorance of reality. And yeah, they were able to get away with it in the past because people had no choice except to believe. But we've got scientific proof now. You can't ignore the science of quantum energy. I witnessed it. It's the only thing that explains how a light being could materialise in the way that it did. Listen to the first part of the video below. It makes perfect sense. Quantum energy. Jesus knew it. Prophet Muhammad knew it. Prophet Isaiah knew it. It's been with us all the time. And we benefit from it when we accept it. And when we refuse to accept the nonsense of these mad people that just cannot believe, that dare not believe. They dare not believe. They're terrified. They're terrified of the father figure, the true father, and the true mother. They're terrified because those parents, they will not let them get away with the things that they've been getting away with. Them parents are horrified to discover what their children have been doing, and they are terrified, and that's why they fight it off at every generation, because they do not want to be called to account, because they want freedom to commit crimes, and mostly crimes against women and children, because they've got satisfactions, they've got desires to satisfy, perverse desires to have the kind of law that gives a man a right to reach out and grab a pussy, as much pussy as he wants. That's what I'm talking about. And are we surprised at his choice of Supreme Court judge? Well, I'm here to tell you today, okay, that there is only one supreme judge in life, and that is the universal intelligence that created us, okay? And it is time to stand with the law, the universal law that has come to us through people like Jesus, through time, that continues to shine through time. And I've shared it today, and as I say, just imagine for one moment if you had to experience something like that and receive that message and then live in this world and just be ignored and be told that you're a liar. And everybody you turn to, even the church, people claiming to be spiritual people, even people claiming to support the left, whatever, everybody you contact, everybody just ignores you. Just ignores you. And you just watch. And you know, you're having to tolerate people like Nigel Farage, you know, he's there on, you know, Channel 4 News and what have you. I mean, it's just, well, people like Jimmy Dore, Abby Martin, Chris Hedges, all marginalised, or, oh, we'll drag Chris Hedges out for some intellectual debate that's all up in the air and very far removed from the reality on the ground that actually Chris Hedges addresses. The only way, seriously, is standing up for our rights, is standing up for the reality, is by accepting we are universal beings as hosts to the golden light intelligence that created us and that created everything in this universe, okay?